Sid. No shows, a card. Supposed back injury. For a New York indie on May 1st, he was meant to be wrestling Ahmed Johnson, who also no-showed his dates because he refused to ride to the venue in a Nissan Altima. Dennis Corluzzo, who I suspect you've met before, Dennis Corluzzo, a few times here and there, ends up giving... You wrestled him?
Met Dennis Corluzzo twice in my life, face to face. Met him twice in my life.
Really? So you never did any NWA, whatever it was, dates for him? Was it? I know it was a conflict of interest with Paul, but
well, I met him the first day I remember meeting. I was with Eddie Gilbert. We were driving somewhere when Eddie was still at ECW, and we stopped at the Renaissance Hotel by the Philly Airport. He had to pick a paycheck. He had worked from 92 earlier, and he had to pick his paycheck. And we met in the lobby. I should say they met instead. And as a passing thing, Eddie said, "Oh, Shane, meet Dennis Corluzzo." We shook hands, and I don't even recall we had any conversation. With "Hey, how you doing?" type of thing. And then the next time I would meet him would be the night the NWA title was thrown. I'm pretty sure that's the only two times I ever met him.
So Dennis Corluzzo, after Ahmed Johnson refuses to turn up, ends up giving Ahmed's hotel room number and phone for fans to yell at him. And he was getting phone calls all through the night for no showing because he was being a big star. Okay, right, so this really relates to no shows. We'll talk about Sid first. Is how, and we were talking about, weirdly, no shows off air as well, of people who can be a bit flaky purposefully. How unreliable over the years is Sid? Or is he only unreliable with indies but always reliable for the big companies unless he's got a softball match on?
Yeah, well, fairly common. It's in fact, was talking before we got on the air to you. I was up in Canada, and the promoter up there said, for the course of 19 days, I'm talking about everything, and he said that he had Sid booked. Talked to Sid the night he'd been talking because he was a winner, the reputation. And, said the night before Sid called and said, "Hey, how's the weather up there? I want to make sure I bring the right clothes and all of that." Gets to the airport to pick him up, and Sid calls and said, "Can't make it." Just he didn't know why he pulled out. So, we still hear this periodically today. You'll be at a convention and somebody will say, "Sid was supposed to be here, but," you know what the rest of the line's going to be. It's more shocking to me when I walk in and somebody goes, "Oh, Sid's here." "Oh, shit, Sid's here? He's actually here? You can go see him?" I've always gone along great with Sid, but it's just hard for me to imagine how, like, when you hear these stories, they say, like, Justin Credible, like, constantly no-showing people. Sid doing this pretty consistently. And you wonder, like, okay, so who's the next guy to go? Well, I'll take the chance, right? Because, you have a pretty good chance that he ain't going to be. And so, they still hear this consistently. Hear it every single weekend. You hear this. 2-3 times a year, you'll hear somebody on this. Sid supposed to be this with me. I'm not aware because you don't follow this stuff. Don't get on the computer all looking at this stuff. I'm unaware of when's the last time that Sid had made an appearance. I haven't heard his name for a while.
He no-showed his own podcast. Apparently he had a podcast out like a couple of years ago or a year ago or whatever, and then he just no-showed it, just went completely off the radar. But it was his podcast, and he just disappeared.
Well, James, sorry, I gotta go. You're going to softball.
Yeah, I'll see you in 4 years.
yeah. Who knows? It's what goes to these guys. What I ultimately think of Sid is I don't think Sid has a love for the business. Like me getting even now. I look back and I'm that I've even had this career because when you come in, you're so fish out of water. And, you're constantly reminded, not like the guys would say it to you, but you just watch their matches and go, "Man, I'm never going to be that good." And you just watch. And so, but there was like a drive in me. I wanted to, and I still stand in awe of the business after 40 years. So, like, I told my son this the other night. He's up from Tennessee. Great to see him. that they from the time they were born on, their dad was a former world champion, and so it always on the top served cards and stuff. But I told them the other day, I said, there was a whole lot of my career before you were born that you didn't see. That wasn't quite so rosy. That wasn't quite so lofty. That wasn't quite so, big money. But that's what you need to get there. There was a time when Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons from Kiss worked in a middle school as a typist, and I drove a cab. You look. So what we know now, and you look at Kiss today and see the legacy, the 50-year legacy they left behind, the mountain of music. It's pretty cool. It must be cool to be Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. I'm sure it is. There was a time when it probably wasn't so cool to be Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, and but they built it. It takes the time. And so when you wonder at guys like Sid, he wasn't this imposing physical specimen, and he is. By my size trying to pull that would have been like, yeah, next. We don't need a kid that ain't going to show up. But because he was so imposing, that he has that, and this is not a smirch towards Sid. There's a lot of people I see in my business that don't really have. Well, I think especially today more than ever, but even then, there were a lot of guys that said, "Well, I can use wrestling to get from here to there." And especially now, like when you look at Dwayne and Cena. By the way, great spot by Cena on the Huskers the other night. You watch this and you say, okay, great, good stuff. They've created a new avenue for the boys. So you can see how young talent coming into the business. I had no desire. There was no thought in my head. Maybe I can use wrestling to get to here to there. My whole thing was, because it was like saying, okay, I'm going to go to Pluto. Yeah. The idea of getting into wrestling and then being successful in wrestling would have been saying, okay, I'm going to grow a pair of wings and fly around the planet. Just impossible. And I just think there's a lot of Sid and a lot of guys like him. That's no slam. I get it. Especially a big guy like him. You could, many jobs for a 7-foot, monster like that around, the towns where he's from or any place. But, wrestling, suddenly you're set apart. You're something special in wrestling. And so, slammed him, and God bless him, people still trying to book him. So after all these years and all these no shows, people still trying to book old Sid.